A single mum becomes a dancer at an elite club to save her sick daughter, but catches the eye of a grieving billionaire. Their love story unravels secrets, betrayal, and redemption, proving that hope and family can heal even the deepest wounds. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Trinity Williams stood in front of the mirror in the hospital changing room, her hands trembling as she changed out of her physical therapist uniform. The words from Dr. Patterson still echoed in her head. "Your daughter Lily has a rare genetic condition. Without treatment, she has less than a year." She closed her locker and leaned against it, fighting back tears. 6 years ago, when she'd given birth to Lily as a single mother, she'd promised to give her daughter the world. Now at 32, that promise was being put to the ultimate test. $2 million, she whispered to herself. The cost of the experimental treatment that could save Lily's life might as well have been $20 billion. Even with her steady job as a physical therapist, even with the small savings she'd put aside from her days as a professional ballerina, it was an impossible sum. Trinity walked through the hospital corridors, passing the pediatric ward where she knew Lily was sleeping, her beautiful little girl, who loved to twirl around their small apartment, pretending to be a butterfly, just like her mama used to do. On stage, the same little girl who now struggled to climb a flight of stairs without getting winded. "Mrs. Williams?" a voice called out. It was Susan from the insurance department, holding a stack of papers. "I'm sorry, but the review board made their final decision. They won't cover the experimental treatment." Trinity nodded, having expected this answer after weeks of fighting with the insurance company. "Thank you for trying, Susan." At home that evening, after tucking Lily into bed and reading her favorite story about a dancing princess, Trinity sat at her kitchen table surrounded by loan applications. One by one, she read the rejection letters. Single mother, too much risk, insufficient collateral. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Maria. "Did you consider what we talked about? The club is still hiring." Trinity's stomach churned. Lunar Elite, the most exclusive gentlemen's club in Manhattan. Maria worked there as a bartender and had mentioned they were looking for dancers. "They pay more for real dancers," Maria had said. "And with your background," Trinity looked at the framed photo on her wall, herself in a white tutu performing Swan Lake at Lincoln Center, before the knee injury that ended her career, before she'd rebuilt her life as a physical therapist, before Lily. Another text from Maria. "Just come check it out. No pressure. Think about Lily." Trinity walked to her daughter's room and watched her sleep. Lily's breathing was slightly labored, a recent development that terrified Trinity. On the nightstand sat the medicine calendar, with more pills than any 6-year-old should have to take. "I'll do anything for you, baby girl," Trinity whispered. "Anything." The next morning, Trinity dropped Lily off at school and called in sick to work. She put on her most professional outfit, a black pencil skirt and blazer from her job interviews, and took the subway to Manhattan's luxury district. The Lunar Elite Club occupied the top 2 floors of a high-rise, with a discreet entrance and a view of Central Park. "Trinity!" Maria greeted her at the staff entrance. "I'm so glad you came." The club manager, Ms. Chen, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had seen it all. She looked Trinity up and down. "Maria says you were a professional ballerina." "Yes, with the New York Ballet Company." "Show me." In the empty club, with morning sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Trinity danced. No music, no costume, just pure technique and emotion. When she finished, Ms. Chen was nodding. "We start at $500 per night, plus tips. More for private rooms. You can keep your day job. We only need you 3 nights a week." Trinity did the math in her head. It would take months, maybe a year, but with every penny saved, when can I start? That night, after picking up Lily and going through their usual evening routine, Trinity sat alone in her living room. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. Still the same person. Still Lily's mother. Still a fighter. She picked up her phone and texted Maria, "I'll take the Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday slots." The reply came quickly. "You're doing the right thing, honey. This is just temporary." Trinity touched the cross necklace her grandmother had given her. "Just temporary," she repeated to herself, "just until I save my baby girl." She didn't know it yet, but her decision that day would set in motion events that would change not just her life, but the lives of some of New York's most powerful people. And it would all begin with a dance that would catch the eye of a man who hadn't felt anything in years. Jack Prescott sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at the ballet shoes mounted in a glass case on his wall. They had belonged to his late wife, Isabel. 3 years had passed since her death, but some days the pain felt as fresh as yesterday. "Mr. Prescott?" His assistant, Rebecca, poked her head in. "Your father is here for the board meeting." Jack sighed and straightened his tie. At 40, he was one of the youngest billionaires in New York, but in his father's presence he still felt like a disappointing teenager. Richard Prescott II strode into the boardroom like he owned it, which, technically, he still partly did. "Jack, the board is concerned about your leadership. You're not focused. The Hamilton merger is slipping through our fingers." "The merger is fine, Dad. I'm handling it." "Like you're handling your life?" Richard's cold eyes swept over his son. "It's been 3 years. Isn't it time you got back out there, found someone new?" Jack gripped the edge of the conference table. "I'm not having this conversation." His sister, Madison, the family rebel at 35, jumped in to defend him. "Leave him alone, Dad. Not everything is about business and appearances." After the meeting, Madison followed Jack to his office. "You know what you need? A night out. Away from all this." "I'm not interested in your charity matchmaking, Maddie." "Who said anything about matchmaking?" Madison smiled. "I just got a membership to this new club, Lunar Elite. Very exclusive, very discreet. Come with me tonight, just to get out of this tower you've locked yourself in." Jack started to refuse, but something in his sister's concerned expression made him pause. Maybe she was right. Maybe he did need to rejoin the world of the living. "Fine, one drink." That night, Lunar Elite was packed with Manhattan's elite. Jack sat at a private table with Madison, nursing a scotch and feeling completely out of place. The dancers were skilled, but he barely noticed them. Then the lights dimmed and a new performer took the stage. From the first movement, Jack couldn't look away. The dancer moved with a grace that transcended the venue. There was something haunting in her performance, a mix of strength and sadness that reminded him so much of Isabel's final dance. "Who is she?" he asked the waitress. "That's Trinity, she's new." Madison watched her brother's face with interest. For the first time in 3 years, she saw a spark in his eyes. After the performance, Jack asked to meet the dancer. In the private, VIP area, Trinity approached cautiously. Up close, she was even more striking. Her face had a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with her surroundings. "Your performance," Jack said. "It reminded me of someone." "Thank you, Mr. Prescott." Jack Prescott. He saw the recognition in her eyes, but appreciated that she didn't react. That last piece. What inspired it? Trinity hesitated. "My daughter. She's sick. When I dance, I think about her." The honesty of her answer caught him off guard. No pretense, no flirting, just raw truth. "I'd like to talk more. Somewhere else. Perhaps over coffee." Trinity's guard went up immediately. "I don't date clients, Mr. Prescott." "Not a date, just coffee and conversation about dance. Professional interest only." She studied him for a long moment. "I have a day job, Mr. Prescott. This is temporary." "I understand. Coffee is still just coffee." Trinity thought about Lily, about the medical bills piling up. A professional connection with someone like Jack Prescott could open doors. One coffee. In public. Back at his penthouse that night, Jack found himself looking at Isabel's ballet. Shoes again. But for the first time in years, the pain was mixed with something else. Hope, maybe, or at least curiosity. His phone buzzed. A message from his father. "Saw you at Lunar Elite. Be careful, son. Some people will do anything for money." Jack turned off his phone. His father had always excelled at poisoning anything that might bring joy. The next morning, Trinity arrived at the hospital for her shift, exhausted but focused. A nurse stopped her in the hallway. "Dr. Patterson wants to see you. It's about Lily." Trinity's heart dropped. She rushed to the doctor's office, where he waited with a grave expression. "The latest tests show the disease is progressing faster than we anticipated," he said gently. "We need to start the treatment soon, very soon." Trinity gripped her purse where she kept an envelope with her earnings from Lunar Elite. Not even close to enough. Not yet. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee at 2 p.m.? Jack Prescott?" She stared at the message for a long time. Everything in her life had become a calculation. Time versus money, dignity versus necessity, hope versus reality. She typed back, 2 p.m., the coffee shop across from St. Luke's Hospital. What Trinity didn't know was that at that very moment, Richard Prescott II was already making calls, digging into her background, and he wasn't going to like what he found. The coffee shop across from St. Luke's Hospital was busy with the afternoon rush when Trinity walked in. She spotted Jack Prescott immediately. It was hard to miss him in his perfectly tailored suit among the doctors and nurses in scrubs. "You look different," he said as she sat down. She was wearing her physical therapist uniform, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "This is who I really am, Mr. Prescott. The other person, the dancer, that's just temporary. Call me Jack." He pushed a coffee toward her. "I took a chance and ordered. The barista said you get this every day." Trinity smiled despite herself. "You did your homework." "I prefer to call it thorough research. It's a habit in my line of work." While they talked, Richard Prescott sat in his luxury car across the street, watching through tinted windows. A private investigator handed him a file through the window. "Everything we found on Trinity Williams," the investigator said. "Former ballerina, now a physical therapist. Single mother. Daughter has a rare genetic condition. Started working at Lunar Elite 2 weeks ago." Richard's face darkened as he read. "Keep digging. Everyone has secrets." Inside the coffee shop, Trinity found herself relaxing as she and Jack talked about dance, about his late wife Isabel, about the art of movement and healing. "So that's why I switched to physical therapy," Trinity explained. "After my knee injury, I realized I could still help people through movement, just in a different way." "And your daughter? What's her name?" "Lily." Trinity's face softened. "She's 6. She loves to dance too when she has the energy." Jack noticed how Trinity's hand tightened around her coffee cup. "The illness? Is it serious?" "Very. There's a treatment, but—" She stopped herself. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't burden you with this. I'd like to help." "No." Trinity's voice was firm. "That's not why I agreed to meet you." Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from his father. "My office, now. Important merger details." Trinity saw his expression change. "You need to go. Have dinner with me," Jack said suddenly. "A real dinner. No shop talk, no business connections, just 2 people getting to know each other." Trinity thought about saying no. She thought about Lily, about the hospital bills, about how complicated this could get. "Okay, dinner." Later, that afternoon, Jack sat in his father's office, his mind still on Trinity. "Are you even listening?" Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "The Hamilton merger is worth billions and you're distracted by some dancer? Her name is Trinity. I know exactly who she is." Richard tossed the investigator's file on the desk. "A stripper with a sob story. How convenient that her daughter needs exactly the kind of money you could provide." Jack felt his anger rising. "Don't talk about her daughter. Wake up, Jack. Women like that prey on men like you, rich, vulnerable, lonely. Like you'd know anything about real feelings," Jack shot back. "When was the last time you felt anything genuine for anyone?" Richard's face turned cold. "I'm trying to protect you and our company. No, you're trying to control me, like always." At St. Luke's Hospital, Trinity was finishing her last patient session when Dr. Patterson called her into his office again. "I have good news and bad news," he said. "The good news is that Lily has been approved for the experimental treatment program." Trinity's heart leaped. "And the bad news? The hospital board suddenly has concerns about your employment situation. Someone sent them information about your night job." Trinity felt the blood drain from her face. "How did they—" "I'm sorry, Trinity. They're threatening to withdraw Lily from the program unless—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Trinity walked out of his office in a daze. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jack confirming dinner plans for tomorrow. Another buzz, a message from an unknown number. "Stay away from my son. I can make things very difficult for you and your daughter. Richard Prescott." She sank into a chair in the empty hospital corridor, her world spinning. Everything she'd done to save Lily was falling apart. And now, just when she'd started to feel something real for Jack, Madison Prescott was walking by the hospital on her way to a charity meeting when she saw Trinity through the window. Something in the other woman's devastated expression made her stop. She remembered how her father had destroyed every real relationship Jack had tried to have after Isabel. Making a decision, Madison turned and walked into the hospital. "Trinity Williams," she said, approaching the seated woman. "I'm Madison Prescott, Jack's sister, and I think it's time someone stood up to—" "My father." Trinity looked up at the stylish woman standing before her, surprised to see genuine kindness in her eyes. "I don't want to cause problems in your family," Trinity said. "Oh, honey," Madison smiled. "The problems were there long before you came along. The question is, are you ready to fight? Because my father doesn't play fair, but neither do I." Meanwhile, in his office, Richard Prescott made another call. "Yes, I want all the details about her daughter's medical treatment. Find something, anything we can use. No one makes a fool of my son. The sun was setting over New York City, casting long shadows through the hospital windows. In the pediatric ward, Lily Williams sat in her bed, drawing a picture of a princess, who looked suspiciously like her mother. "Who's that?" her nurse asked, pointing to the man the princess was dancing with in the picture. "That's Mum's new friend," Lily said with a smile. "I heard her talking about him on the phone. He makes her happy." The nurse smiled back, not knowing that this innocent drawing would soon become the center of a storm that would shake the foundations of one of New York's most powerful families. The restaurant Jack chose for their dinner was elegant but private, a small Italian place in the West Village where the owner still made his own pasta and the paparazzi never ventured. "No cameras, no business partners," Jack said as they were seated in a quiet corner. "Just us." Trinity wore a simple black dress she'd bought years ago for a ballet company fundraiser. "It's beautiful here. I thought you might like it. It's where my wife and I had our first date." Trinity's hand froze on her menu. "Jack, I don't want to be a replacement for Isabel." "You couldn't be," he said softly. "You're your own person. That's what draws me to you." Before Trinity could respond, her phone buzzed. The hospital. Her heart stopped when she saw Dr. Patterson's name. "I have to take this," she apologized. "It's about Lily." She stepped outside into the warm evening air. "Dr. Patterson." "Trinity, I'm sorry to call so late. There's been a problem with Lily's insurance authorization. All her paperwork has been flagged for review." "What? But you said she was approved." "Someone from the hospital board is questioning everything. They're even suggesting an ethics investigation because of your employment situation." Trinity felt her knees go weak. Behind her, Jack appeared in the restaurant doorway, concern written on his face. "I'll figure something out," she told. Dr. Patterson ending the call. "What's wrong?" Jack asked. Trinity tried to hold back tears. "Someone's interfering with Lily's treatment. The hospital board, the insurance. It's all falling apart." Jack's face darkened. "My father. I got his message earlier. He wants me to stay away from you." "I'll handle him," Jack said firmly. "Let me help." "Trinity, please." She shook her head. "You don't understand. If I accept your help, it proves him right about me, that I'm just after your money. Is that really more important than Lily's life?" The question hit Trinity like a slap. She turned, away conflicted. "I need to go." "Trinity, wait." But she was already hurrying down the street, tears streaming down her face. The next morning, Madison Prescott marched into her father's office, unannounced. "What did you do?" she demanded. Richard barely looked up from his papers. "I'm protecting our family. By threatening a sick child, that's low even for you. I'm ensuring that gold digger can't sink her claws into your brother." Madison slammed her hands on his desk. "Her name is Trinity, and she's exactly what Jack needs. Someone real, someone who actually cares about him, not his money. Like your mother cared about me." Richard's voice was ice. "Before she ran off with that artist, leaving me to raise you two alone. Don't you dare make this about Mom. This is about you never letting Jack be happy." While they argued, Jack sat in his office, making calls to every hospital board member he knew, but his father's influence ran deep. At Lunar Elite, Trinity changed into her costume with shaking hands. She had to dance tonight. She needed every dollar now more than ever. "You okay, honey?" Maria asked, helping her with her makeup. "I don't know what to do anymore," Trinity admitted. "Everything I try to fix just gets worse. Maybe you need to let someone help you." "I can't. The moment I take Jack's money, I prove his father right, and I lose any chance of—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Any chance of what?" "Love." Maria turned Trinity to face her. "Girl, I've watched you fight alone for years. Sometimes being strong means knowing when to let someone fight beside you." On stage that night, Trinity danced with a passion born of desperation. In the audience, Richard Prescott watched from a private booth, his face unreadable. After her performance, he approached her. $5 million, he said without preamble. Trinity stared at him. "What? $5 million to disappear? From my son's life, enough to pay for your daughter's treatment and set you both up comfortably far away from New York." Trinity felt sick. "You're trying to buy me off. I'm offering you a choice. Take the money and leave, or watch your daughter suffer while I systematically destroy any chance of her getting treatment in this city." Before Trinity could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "I thought I'd find you here, Dad." They turned to see Jack standing there, his face a mask of fury. "Buying off another woman who might make me happy, just like you did with Sarah." "After Isabel died," Richard's face reddened. I was protecting you. No, Jack's voice shook with anger. You were controlling me, like always. He turned to Trinity. I know why you've been pushing me away, but I'm not my father's son. I don't see you as a charity case or a gold digger. I see you as the strongest person I've ever met. Trinity felt tears forming. Jack, Suddenly her phone rang. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. Her hands trembling, Trinity answered. Hello? Dr. Patterson's voice was urgent. Trinity, you need to come to the hospital right away. It's Lily. She's had a severe reaction to her medication. We need to start the experimental treatment now, or... The phone slipped from Trinity's hand. Jack caught her as her knees gave way. What is it? What's wrong? Lily. Trinity couldn't form the words. Richard Prescott watched the scene unfold, something shifting in his cold eyes as he saw his son hold the sobbing woman. For the first time in years, he remembered another hospital, another night, when a young dancer named Isabel had helped his grieving son smile again. Maybe, just maybe, he was wrong about Trinity Williams. But first, they had to save her daughter's life. The emergency room at St. Luke's Hospital was chaos when Trinity burst through the doors, still wearing her dance costume, under a hastily thrown-on coat. Jack was right behind her, his hand steady on her back. I'm looking for Lily Williams. Trinity told the nurse at the desk, her voice shaking. I'm her mother. Dr. Patterson appeared, his face grave. Trinity, good, you're here. Lily's condition has deteriorated rapidly. The regular medications aren't working anymore. Through the window of the pediatric ICU, Trinity could see her little girl hooked up to machines, her breathing labored. Maria sat beside the bed. She'd been watching Lily during Trinity's shift at the club. The experimental treatment, Trinity said. Can we start it now? The hospital board has put everything on hold, Dr. Patterson explained. Without proper authorization, to hell with authorization, Jack stepped forward. I'll pay for it right now. It's not that simple, Dr. Patterson said. The board chairman, he was very specific about not proceeding without full review. Trinity knew who was behind this. She turned to Jack, tears in her eyes. Your father. Just then, Richard Prescott himself walked into the emergency room, Madison right behind him. Dad, Jack's voice was dangerous. Fix this. Now. Richard looked through the window at the small girl in the hospital bed. For a moment, his stern face softened. She looks like her mother. Please, Trinity whispered. Whatever you think of me, don't punish my daughter. Richard pulled out his phone, but before he could make the call, alarms started blaring in Lily's room. Medical staff rushed in as the little girl's vitals crashed. She's crashing, a nurse shouted. We need to stabilize her now. Trinity pressed her hands against the glass, watching helplessly as doctors worked to save her daughter. Jack held her up as her knees weakened. Do something, Madison screamed at her father. For once in your life, do the right thing. Richard Prescott had built his empire on being ruthless, on never letting emotions cloud his judgment. But watching the scene before him, the desperate mother, his son's anguished face, the small girl fighting for her life, something cracked in his carefully maintained facade. He dialed a number on his phone. This is Richard Prescott. Override. The board's decision on the Williams case. Start the treatment immediately. Yes, I'll take full responsibility. Dr. Patterson rushed to action, barking orders to his team. Get the treatment protocol started. Every minute counts. Trinity couldn't take her eyes off Lily. Will she? The next few hours are critical, Dr. Patterson said, but the treatment gives her a fighting chance. As the medical team worked, Trinity felt her legs give way. Jack caught her, guiding her to a chair. She was still in her dance costume, mascara streaking her face. I failed her, Trinity whispered. I tried to do everything on my own, and I failed her. No, Jack said firmly. You fought harder than anyone I've ever known, but you don't have to fight alone anymore. Richard watched his son comfort Trinity, seeing for the first time what Madison had been trying to tell him. This wasn't some gold digger looking for a meal ticket. This was a mother who'd do anything to save her child. Madison approached her father. Makes you think, doesn't it? About the night Mom left? Richard's jaw tightened. Your mother chose to leave. No, Dad. You drove her away because you couldn't stand that she loved art more than money. Are you really going to let Jack lose someone else he loves because of your control issues? Hours passed in tense waiting. Trinity never left her spot by Lily's window. Jack never left Trinity's side. Even Richard stayed, making calls to ensure the treatment continued without interruption. Finally, around dawn, Dr. Patterson emerged with news. "She's responding to the treatment," he announced. "Her vitals are stabilizing." Trinity broke down in tears of relief. Jack wrapped his arms around her as Madison hugged them both. Richard stood apart, watching. He thought about another hospital room years ago when he'd gotten the call about Isabel's accident, how Jack had shut down after her death until now. He approached Trinity slowly. "Miss Williams, Trinity, I owe you an apology." Trinity looked up at him, exhausted but steady. "I don't want your apology, Mr. Prescott. I want your word that you'll never interfere with my daughter's care again." "You have it," Richard said solemnly, "and my support, for whatever that's worth." Jack stared at his father in surprise. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to realize what really matters." Through the window, they could see Lily's color improving, her breathing easier. Maria sat beside her, reading her favorite story about the dancing princess. Trinity turned to Jack. "I can't repay you for this." "I don't want repayment," he said softly. "I just want a chance, a real chance with you and Lily." Madison wiped away tears, smiling. "Well, it's about time." Richard checked, his phone, his business mask slipping back into place. "The board will need a full report. I'll handle it." As he turned to leave, he paused. "Trinity, welcome to the family." After he left, Madison laughed. "That's as close to a blessing as you'll ever get from him." Morning sunlight started streaming through the hospital windows. Trinity, still in her dance costume from the night before, looked down at herself and laughed through her tears. "I must look a mess." "You look beautiful," Jack said simply. "Like a fighter, like a mother, like the woman I'm falling in love with." Through the window, Lily stirred in her sleep, a small smile on her face as the life-saving medicine flowed through her veins. The night had changed everything, but morning brought more than just sunlight. It brought hope, healing, and the promise of a new beginning for all of them. A week after Lily's crisis, Trinity stood in the dressing room of Luna Elite for the last time. She was packing up her few belongings when Ms. Chen walked in. "Sure you won't stay?" the manager asked. "You're our biggest draw." Trinity shook her head. "My daughter needs me, and I need to figure out who I am now." As she left through the back door, Jack was waiting by his car. "Ready?" "You didn't have to come," Trinity said, but she was smiling. "I wanted to. Besides, we need to stop by the hospital to check on Lily before dinner with my father." Trinity's smile faded. Despite Richard's change of heart during Lily's crisis, family dinners at the Prescott mansion were still tense affairs. At the hospital, they found Lily sitting up in bed, coloring with Madison, who had become a constant visitor. "Mommy!" Lily's face lit up. "Look what Aunt Maddie brought me." Trinity's heart warmed at how naturally Lily had started calling Madison Aunt Maddie. The pile of new art supplies on the bed showed just how often Jack's sister had been visiting. "The doctors say her numbers are improving," Madison reported. "The treatment is working." Just then, Dr. Patterson walked in with a worried look. "Trinity, could I speak with you privately?" In the hallway, he handed her a letter. "The ethics board completed their review of your case. Because of your previous employment situation, they're recommending suspension of your physical therapy license pending a full investigation." Trinity felt the floor drop out from under her. Even now, her past at Luna Elite was threatening everything she'd worked for. Jack, who had followed them out, read the letter over her shoulder. His face darkened. "This is still my father's doing." The old Richard showing through. "No," Trinity said firmly. "This is hospital politics. I'll fight it myself." "You don't have to. Let me help." "Jack, we talked about this. I need to stand on my own 2 feet." Back in Lily's room, Madison was on her phone, her face serious. She stepped out to join them. "That was my contact on the hospital board," she said. "Apparently, Janet Chen, the manager from Luna Elite, is friends with one of the board members. She's been sharing stories." Trinity closed her eyes. Of course. She'd turned down Ms. Chen's offer to stay, and now she was paying the price. "I'll handle it," Jack said, pulling out his phone. "No," Trinity's voice was sharp. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. I can't just be the woman Jack Prescott saved. I need to fix this my way." She turned to Dr. Patterson. "I want to speak to the ethics board in person. Let them ask their questions. Let them see who I really am." Later that evening at the Prescott mansion, Trinity was quiet during dinner. Richard noticed. "You seem distracted," he said, trying for a kinder tone than his usual bark. "The ethics board?" Jack answered for her. "They're threatening her license." Richard set down his fork. "Because of the club?" Trinity met his eyes. "Yes. Apparently, saving my daughter's life the only way I could makes me unfit to help other patients." Richard was silent for a moment. "You know, when Isabel died, I thought Jack would never recover. I became obsessed with protecting him, controlling everything and everyone around him." "Dad," Madison warned, "don't." "But Richard," continued, "I was wrong about you, Trinity. You did what you had to do for your child. There's no shame in that." "Thank you," Trinity said softly. "But I need to handle this myself. At least let me give you a name," Richard said. "Patricia Morrison. She's the head of the ethics board. 20 years ago, her daughter was in a car accident. The doctors said she'd never walk again." Trinity's eyes widened with recognition. "Sarah Morrison. She was one of my first patients when I started. At St. Luke's. She runs marathons now." "Exactly." Richard smiled slightly. "Sometimes the best defense is simply the truth." The next morning, Trinity stood before the ethics board in her physical therapist uniform, her head held high. "Ms. Williams," Patricia Morrison began, "your recent employment history raises serious concerns about—" "Mrs. Morrison," Trinity interrupted, "before you continue, I'd like to tell you about why I became a physical therapist. And then I'd like to remind you about your daughter Sarah and the day she took her first steps after her accident." 2 hours later, Trinity walked out of the hearing room to find Jack, Madison, and even Richard waiting. "Well?" Madison asked anxiously. "They're dismissing the complaint," Trinity said, her voice thick with emotion. "I get to keep my license. And they're starting a fund to help other medical professionals who are struggling to pay for their children's care." Jack pulled her into a hug. "I never doubted you." "There's something else," Trinity said, pulling back to look at them all. "I've been offered a position heading up the hospital's new pediatric physical therapy department." "Trinity, that's amazing," Madison squealed. Richard cleared his throat. "Well, it seems the Prescott family connections won't be necessary after all." "No," Trinity agreed, "but the Prescott family support has meant everything." That night, Trinity tucked Lily into her hospital bed. The little girl was getting stronger every day. "Mommy," Lily asked sleepily, "are we going to live with Jack when I get better?" Trinity smoothed her daughter's hair. "Would you like that?" "Yeah, he makes you smile, and he reads the voices in my stories even better than you do." Trinity laughed softly. "We'll see, baby. First, you need to focus on getting better." Outside in the hallway, Jack was waiting. He'd heard everything. "She's right, you know," he said, taking Trinity's hand. "About making you smile. Jack, move in with us," he said suddenly. "Both of you, the penthouse is too big for just me anyway." Trinity started to protest, but stopped herself. Maybe it was time to stop fighting everything good in her. "Life, let me think about it," she said instead. Jack smiled. "Take all the time you need, we've got the rest of our lives." What they didn't know was that up in his office, Richard Prescott was on the phone with an old friend from his past, someone who knew a secret about Jack's late wife, Isabel, a secret that could change everything. Richard Prescott sat in his study, staring at an old photograph. In it, a younger Isabel smiled at the camera, her arms around another dancer. The other woman's face was half hidden, but her resemblance to Trinity was striking. His phone buzzed. "Did you find her?" he asked. "Yes," the investigator replied. "Elena Williams is living in Chicago. She's Trinity's older sister, and she was Isabel's best friend in the ballet company." Richard's hands tightened on the photo. "Does Trinity know?" "As far as we can tell, Trinity has no idea her sister knew Isabel. Elena left the family when Trinity was young, before she joined the ballet company." "Keep this quiet," Richard ordered. "I need to handle this carefully." Across town, Trinity was helping Lily settle into their new room in Jack's penthouse. The little girl's strength was returning more each day, and the doctors were optimistic about her recovery. "Look, Mommy," Lily pointed out the window. "I can see Central Park from here." Trinity smiled, but her heart was heavy. Moving in with Jack felt right, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. Madison burst in, carrying shopping bags. "Who's ready for a decoration party?" "Aunt Maddie!" Lily ran to hug her. "Did you bring the sparkly lights we talked about? And unicorn pillows and a ballet dancer lamp?" And Madison winked at Trinity. "Everything a princess needs." Trinity watched them unpack the bags, grateful for how easily Madison had embraced Lily. But something in the way Madison kept glancing at her phone made Trinity suspicious. "Everything okay?" she asked when Lily was distracted with her new treasures. Fine, Madison said too quickly. Just work stuff. What Trinity didn't know was that Madison had just received a disturbing email from an old family friend. Does Jack know the truth about Isabel's accident? Later that evening, Jack hosted a small dinner party to welcome Trinity and Lily. The guest list included Maria from the club and some of Trinity's colleagues from the hospital. "To new beginnings," Jack toasted, his arm around Trinity. As their guests mingled, Trinity noticed Richard arrive late, looking troubled. He pulled Jack aside immediately. In Jack's study, Richard faced his son. "There's something you need to know about Isabel." "Dad, not tonight," Jack protested. "This is supposed to be a happy evening. It's about her accident. It might not have been an accident." Jack's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" Before Richard could answer, they heard a crash from the living room. They rushed out to find Lily on the floor, Maria kneeling beside her. "She just got dizzy," Maria explained, as Trinity ran to her daughter. "I'm okay, Mommy," Lily insisted, but her face was pale. Dr. Patterson, who was among the guests, examined her quickly. "It's probably just fatigue from the excitement, but we should run some tests tomorrow to be safe." Trinity helped Lily to bed while their guests quietly departed. When she returned, she found Jack staring out the window, his expression dark. "What did your father want?" she asked. "Nothing important," Jack lied, pulling her close. "How's Lily?" "Sleeping." "Jack, I feel like there's something you're not telling me." He kissed her forehead. "Just worried about Lily, that's all." But later that night, Trinity couldn't sleep. She wandered into the living room and found Madison sitting alone in the dark. "Couldn't sleep either?" Madison asked. Trinity sat beside her. "I keep feeling like there's something everyone knows but me." Madison was quiet for a long moment. "There's in my house in a Have you ever heard of Elena Williams?" Trinity stiffened. "My sister. She left when I was 12. I haven't seen her since." "Did you know she was a dancer too?" "She's the one who first taught me ballet. But why are you asking about Elena?" Before Madison could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Don't tell her anything." "Elena is on her way to New York." Madison forced a smile. "Just curious about your family. We should get some sleep." The next morning, Dr. Patterson called with Lily's test results. "Everything looks normal," he assured Trinity, "but there's someone here who'd like to speak with you." "That woman who says she's your sister." Trinity nearly dropped the phone. In the background, she heard a familiar voice. "Hello, little sister. We need to talk about Isabel Prescott." In his office, Richard Prescott picked up a newspaper from 3 years ago. The headline read, "Celebrated dancer Isabel Prescott dies in studio fire, accident or foul play." He opened his safe and pulled out a letter, written in Isabel's handwriting, dated the day before her death. "If anything happens to me, Elena knows the truth." Richard dialed his investigator again. "Find out everything about the night Isabel died, and anything connecting Elena Williams to the studio fire." At the hospital, Trinity stared at her sister for the first time in 20 years. Elena was older, elegant in an expensive suit, but her eyes were the same. "Why are you here?" Trinity demanded. "To protect you," Elena said softly. "You've walked right into the middle of something dangerous, baby sister. The Prescotts, they're not what they seem." "What are you talking about?" Elena pulled out an old photo, herself and Isabel, arms around each other, both in ballet costumes. "Before you fall in love with Jack Prescott," Elena said, "you need to know what really happened to his wife, and why history might be about to repeat itself." Trinity stared at the old photograph in her hands. Her sister Elena and Jack's late wife Isabel, both in costume for Swan Lake, smiling like best friends. "I don't understand," Trinity said. "You knew her all this time?" Elena's face was grim. "I was with her the night she died, the night of the fire." Before Trinity could respond, Jack burst into the hospital room. He stopped short when he saw Elena. "You," he whispered, "you were there. The police could never find you, because your father made sure I disappeared." Eleanor shot back. "Didn't he tell you that part, Jack?" Trinity looked between them. "Someone tell me what's going on." "Tell her, Jack," Eleanor challenged. "Tell my sister how your father threatened to destroy my career if I ever told anyone what really happened that night." Jack's face had gone pale. "My father—" "What?" In his office across town, Richard Prescott was destroying documents, old police reports, witness statements, letters from Isabel. His phone buzzed. "Madison, is it true?" she demanded. "Did you cover up what happened to Isabel?" "Everything I did was to protect this family," Richard said firmly. "By threatening Elena Williams, By hiding the truth from Jack? You don't understand? Then make me understand, Dad. Because right now, you're about to lose both your children. Back at the hospital, Elena was finally telling her story. Isabel had discovered something, she explained, about the company's finances, money being funneled into offshore accounts, millions disappearing. The Hamilton merger, Jack said. Slowly, the one that fell apart after her death. She was going to expose everything, Elena continued. She had proof, but someone set fire to the studio that night while she was practicing. I was supposed to meet her there, but I was late. By the time I arrived, Trinity felt sick. The proof she had, what happened to it? I have it, Elena said quietly. I've kept it hidden all these years. It's what kept me alive. Richard knew if anything happened to me, the evidence would go public. Just then, Lily walked in with Madison. The little girl ran to hug her mother, then stopped, staring at Elena. You look like Mommy, she said. Eleanor's hard expression softened. I'm your Aunt Eleanor, sweetheart. Madison watched the scene with tears in her eyes, then turned to Jack. Dad's destroying evidence in his office right now. Jack's face hardened. I'm ending this today. Jack, wait. Trinity grabbed his arm. Think about what this means. If your father was behind Isabel's death, he wasn't, Eleanor interrupted. Richard Prescott is many things, but he didn't kill Isabel. The fire was set by someone else. Someone who stood to lose everything if the merger fell apart. Hamilton, Jack breathed. Robert Hamilton, who just happened to buy up controlling interest in the company after Isabel's death when the stock prices crashed, Elena confirmed. Trinity's head was spinning. But why is this coming out now? Because history is repeating itself, Elena said. Hamilton is planning another merger. And last week someone broke into my apartment in Chicago. They're looking for Isabel's evidence. Lily tugged on Trinity's hand. Mommy, I don't feel good. Trinity instantly forgot everything else, focusing on her daughter. Lily's face was flushed, her breathing labored. Get Dr. Patterson, Trinity called out as Lily swayed on her feet. It's a side effect of the treatment, Dr. Patterson explained later after they'd stabilized Lily. Her body is fighting, but she's not out of danger yet. Trinity sat by Lily's bedside, holding her small hand. Jack watched from the doorway, his world crumbling around him. I'll understand if you want to leave, he said softly. Get as far away from my family's mess as possible. Trinity looked up at him. Is that what Isabel was trying to do, leave? No, Elena answered from behind Jack. She was trying to save the company, save Jack. Hamilton had evidence that would have destroyed the Prescotts. Isabel was trying to expose him first. And now he's back, Madison added. The new merger is with Hamilton's company, Jack finished. Dad's been pushing for it for months. Trinity stood up, her decision made. Then we finish what Isabel started. For Lily, for Jack, for everyone who's been hurt by these men's greed. It's dangerous, Elena warned. So is doing nothing, Trinity countered. My daughter almost died because of men like Hamilton, men who think money matters more than lives. Just then, Richard Prescott walked in, looking older than they'd ever seen him. I talked to the police, he said heavily. Told them everything I know about the night. Isabel died, and he pulled out a flash drive. This contains every correspondence, every transaction between our company and Hamilton's for the past 5 years. Jack stared at his father. Why now? Because I saw the way Trinity fought for her daughter. Richard's voice broke. It reminded me of how Isabel fought for you, for our family. I was a coward then. I won't be one now. Before anyone could respond, a nurse rushed in. Mr. Prescott, there's a Robert Hamilton here to see you. He says it's urgent. Through the window, they could see Hamilton in the hallway, flanked by 2 men who were obviously not business associates. Richard straightened his tie. Madison, call our security team. Jack, get that flash drive to the police. Elena, I believe you have something they'll need as well. Dad, Jack protested. You can't face him alone. I'm not alone, Richard said, looking at Trinity. I finally understand what real family means. Trinity squeezed his arm as he passed. Be careful. As Richard walked out to face Hamilton, Trinity looked around the room, at Jack, at Madison, at her sister Elena, at Lily sleeping peacefully. A family forged in fire, brought together by love and redemption. But first, they had to survive the next few hours. Richard Prescott walked calmly into the hospital waiting room where Robert Hamilton stood waiting. Even at 65, Hamilton cut an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, and dressed in an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the thuggish nature beneath. Robert, Richard said evenly, this is a surprise. Cut the act, Richard, Hamilton growled. Where's the evidence? Around the corner, Trinity watched the confrontation, while Jack and Madison rushed to get the flash drive to the police. Elena stayed with Lily, who was still sleeping. I don't know what you're talking about, Richard replied. Hamilton stepped closer. 3 years ago, your little daughter-in-law got too close to the truth. Now, her sister shows up with evidence. That could destroy everything. I don't believe in coincidences. Neither do I, Richard said. Like how my son's wife died in a fire the night before she was going to expose your crimes. Hamilton's face darkened. Careful, old friend. Accidents have a way of repeating themselves. Trinity felt her blood run cold at the threat. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Is that a threat, Robert? Richard asked loudly, clearly. Like the threat you made to Isabel the night she died. I did you a favor, Hamilton snarled. That self-righteous wife of Jack's was going to bring down both our companies, just like that dancer of yours is trying to do now. Trinity's hands shook, but she kept recording. So you admit it, Richard pressed. You ordered the fire that killed my daughter-in-law? Hamilton laughed coldly. You really want to play this game? Your hands aren't exactly clean, Richard. All that money we moved around. Who signed the paperwork? I did, Richard said clearly, and I'm prepared to face the consequences. Are you? Suddenly, one of Hamilton's men spotted Trinity with her phone. Boss, she's recording. Everything happened at once. Hamilton lunged for Trinity, but Richard stepped between them. Security guards appeared at both ends of the hallway, along with uniformed police officers. Robert Hamilton, a detective, stepped forward. You're under arrest for the murder of Isabel Prescott and conspiracy to commit fraud. You're making a mistake, Hamilton threatened as they handcuffed him. I'll bring all of you down with me. No, you won't. Elena walked up, holding a laptop. Everything's already been sent to the SEC, the police, and every major news outlet. Isabel's evidence, plus everything that's happened since, it's over. Trinity rushed back to Lily's room, where her daughter was starting to wake up. Mommy, Lily asked sleepily, why is everyone yelling? Everything's okay, baby, Trinity soothed. The bad men can't hurt anyone anymore. Jack burst in, out of breath. Hamilton's been arrested. Dad's giving his statement to the police. Trinity, that recording you made, it's the final piece they needed. Madison followed close behind. The press is already outside. Hamilton's being led out in handcuffs. Elena sat heavily in a chair. After all these years, Isabel can finally rest in peace. But their relief was short-lived. Suddenly, alarms started blaring. Company. Eleanor appeared elegant in a black evening gown. The house is packed. Every major donor in New York is here. Trinity smiled at her sister. Having Eleanor back in her life felt right, like a missing piece had finally fallen into place. Elena had moved back to New York, taking a position as the artistic director of the city ballet. 5 minutes, Madison announced. Dad's car just arrived from the prison. They'd arranged special permission for Richard to attend the performance, his first public appearance since his sentencing. Mommy, look! Lily twirled again in her sparkly tutu. I'm just like you and Aunt Elena. Trinity knelt down to hug her daughter. You're even better, baby girl. You're perfect just as you are. There's my favorite ballerina, Maria called out, arriving with flowers. She'd quit Luna, headed to manage Trinity's new dance therapy program at the hospital. Dr. Patterson appeared next. Lily's latest tests came back. Complete remission. The treatment was a total success. Trinity felt tears forming but held them back. She couldn't ruin her stage makeup now. Jack squeezed her hand, ready to show them what real grace under fire looks like. The benefit performance told their story through dance. Trinity and Lily's struggle, Jack's grief over Isabel, Elena's long exile, the family's fight for justice. But most of all, it celebrated healing, hope, and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. In the front row, Richard Prescott watched with tears in his eyes as his family danced their truth on stage. Next to him sat Patricia Morrison from the Ethics Board, who had become one of their strongest allies. The final piece was a mother-daughter duet. Trinity and Lily moved together, their dance telling a story of love and survival that brought the audience to their feet. As the applause thundered through the theater, Jack stepped on stage with a microphone. Tonight is about more than raising money for medical research, he said. It's about family, about second chances, and he turned to Trinity, dropping to one knee. It's about love. The audience gasped as he pulled out a ring. Trinity Williams, his voice carried clearly through the hall, you taught me that real strength isn't about power or money. It's about fighting for what matters, no matter the cost. Will you marry me? Trinity looked at Lily, who was bouncing with excitement. "Say yes, Mommy," her daughter squealed into the microphone Jack had forgotten was still on. The audience laughed as Trinity pulled Jack to his feet. "Yes," she said simply. 1,000 times yes. Later at the reception, Richard approached Trinity. "I had a lot of time to think in prison," he said, "about what really matters, about the kind of father and grandfather I want to be." "You'll have plenty of time to show us," Trinity assured him. "When you come home." Eleanor joined them, holding Lily. "The benefit raised over $10 million. We're starting a foundation in Isabel's name to help families afford experimental treatments." Madison raised her glass. "To new beginnings. And to those who showed us the way," Jack added, thinking of Isabel. As if on cue, a breeze swept through the open terrace doors, carrying rose petals from the garden. Everyone fell silent, remembering another dancer who had fought for justice and truth. Trinity looked around at her family, Jack beaming with love, Lily healthy and happy, Eleanor finally home, Madison strong in her new role, and Richard finding his way to redemption. Even Maria and Dr. Patterson had become part of their extended family. "You know what this means," Lily said suddenly. "Now I get to be a flower girl." Everyone laughed, the spell broken. That night, after Lily was asleep, Trinity stood on the penthouse balcony looking at the city lights. Jack joined her, wrapping her in his arms. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she answered. "We've all come so far." "You know," Jack said thoughtfully, "I think Isabel would have liked you. You both saw the beauty in broken things, the strength in starting over. I wish I had known her. In a way you did, through Eleanor, through our story, and now her legacy will live on, helping other families fight their own battles." Inside, they could hear Lily talking in her sleep, probably dreaming of weddings and flower girl dresses. Eleanor was staying in the guest room, while Madison worked late at the office, carrying her father's company into a new era of transparency and ethics. "So," Jack smiled, "ready for our next chapter?" Trinity kissed him softly. "As long as we're writing it together." The city stretched out before them, full of possibilities. They had faced fire and shadow, lies and betrayal, and emerged stronger, united, a family. And somewhere, Trinity liked to think, Isabel was smiling. The end.